Pope Francis has written a reflection on COVID-19. It was published in a Spanish online newspaper called Vida Nueva. He reflects on the connection between Jesus' resurrection and the current crisis and expressed his wish to society to find the necessary antibodies of justice, charity, and solidarity. Father Ezra Sullivan, professor of moral theology at the Angelicum University, joins us now from Rome. Father, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Father, Pope Francis and other Vatican officials have urged leaders to ensure health care for everyone, especially now. Can you talk about the positives of doing that and maybe some of the negative implications?
Absolutely. I think the Pope is referring to what we would call the Good Samaritan rule, which is whenever someone has an emergency situation, we as Catholics ought to show them as much care as we can. And that means whether they are in crisis because of a gunshot wound, the coronavirus, or simply because they got into a car crash or something normal, out of charity, we should help them. Now, that's different from saying that everybody ought to have access to health care guaranteed by the government. I would say that, in fact, if the government is going to be in charge of over 17% of the economy, that this is going to lead towards socialism. And socialism is something that Leo XIII condemned all the way back in 1891. So I think there's a difference between helping people in emergencies and offering health care as a standard, as it were, gift or service that the government guarantees.
Can you talk about the balance maybe between looking out for the common goods health while also still trying to sustain the economy?
Oh, absolutely. So health, we would say, of course, is a common good. We talk about herd health, where it's not just an individual, but it's all of us together influence each other's health. Of course, there are other common goods to consider, such as, well, the good of the country, fundamental human rights, the right to worship. And we would say that these rights ought not to be in conflict, but if they are, the higher the right, the more important it needs to be protected. And so the right to religious freedom, as Catholics, we always have the right to worship. And what should happen is that we should be in contact with the state in order to guarantee that we can worship, but also the issue about the economy, we would say, becomes somewhere between the right to worship and the right to health. So we want to look at all of these goods at the same time and try to ensure that there's a proper balance in recognizing how to address each one in turn.
Yeah, Father, you brought up the right to worship. I know a lot of Christians right now are trying to decipher if their religious freedom is maybe being imposed upon. What do you think about that, and how can we navigate living our faith right now?
Well, I would say, first of all, we have to say that the state has no right whatsoever to forbid all Catholic services. We have a God-given right given to us by Christ himself, who founded the church, to worship. However, we should say that the church should listen to experts as to when and how it's going to be safe for our adherents to worship. And so to make a prudential decision, we should try to ensure that people's health is respected. But at the same time, when the Pharisees tried to close down the early church from preaching, St. Peter responded, "We must obey God rather than men." And so I would argue that if grocery stores can stay open and do it in a safe way, or supermarkets or Walmart, likewise, the church should be able to stay open and to have reasonable measures to protect people, whether that means spacing out how many people come to worship at once, or say, one idea that I heard about was everybody whose name starts with an A or a B can worship on Monday. Everybody whose name starts with a C or D, Tuesday. So this way it ensures that people have access. You don't have to say, oh, in 2 months, I'm going to go to Holy Mass. You can say, next Monday's my turn.
Now, Father, thank you so much for your insight. Love it. Really a help to all of us. Father Ezra Sullivan, professor of moral theology at the Angelicum. Thank you again.
Thank you.